All right, so brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs. Seems like you got a ton of questions about them.
Yeah, it's a really hot topic right now.
You've sent over articles and research, even some of your own notes. So let's unpack it all.
It seems like you want to know where BCIs stand in 2025.
Exactly. Who are the major players? What are they doing? And what does it all mean for us?
We'll cover all of that.
Awesome. So for this deep dive, let's break it all down.
Sounds good.
Okay, first things first. What exactly is a BCI?
A BCI is basically a system that creates a direct connection between your brain and a device. This allows your brain to send signals to the device and vice versa.
So it's like a two-way street for communication between, say, your thoughts and a computer or a robotic arm.
Exactly.
Gotcha. And are there different types of BCIs?
Yes, there are two main types: invasive and non-invasive.
Okay, what's the difference?
Invasive BCIs involve implanting electrodes directly into the brain.
Ah, that sounds pretty intense.
It is a surgical procedure.
So what about the non-invasive ones? How do they work?
Non-invasive BCIs use external sensors to pick up on brain activity.
So no surgery required for those.
That's right.
Interesting. Okay, now we can't talk about BCIs without mentioning Neuralink, right?
Well, of course not.
Elon Musk's company seems to be making headlines all the time. What's the big deal with them?
Neuralink's goal is to create ultra-high bandwidth BCIs.
Ultra-high bandwidth, huh? What does that mean?
It means they're aiming to transmit a lot of data between the brain and a device.
I see. So the more data you can transmit, the more you can do with a BCI.
Exactly. They've developed two main systems so far, System A and System B.
Okay, tell me about this.
System A has 1,535 channels for recording brain signals.
1,535 channels. Wow. What about System B?
System B has even more, 3,072 channels.
That's a lot of channels.
Yeah, the more channels you have, the more data you can collect from the brain.
Right. More data means...
More possibilities, more complex control.
Gotcha. But what have they actually achieved so far? It's not all just hype, right?
Oh, not at all. They've made some really impressive progress, especially with their animal trial.
Animal trials?
Yeah, they've demonstrated their system in pigs and monkeys.
What kind of things have they shown?
Well, they've shown real-time recording of brain signals.
So they can actually see what's happening in the brain as it's happening?
Yep. And one of their most famous demos showed a monkey controlling a simple video game using only its thoughts.
No way. A monkey playing video games with its mind.
That's right.
That's wild. So is that what makes Neuralink stand out? The animal trials?
Well, that's part of it. They're also really pushing the boundaries on the hardware side of things.
What do you mean?
Well, for example, they're developing incredibly fine, flexible threads for implantation.
What's so special about these threads?
They're designed to minimize damage to brain tissue.
So they're trying to make the implants as safe as possible.
Exactly. They've also developed a surgical robot to implant these threads with incredible precision.
A surgical robot? That's pretty futuristic.
It is, and it makes the procedure less invasive.
So Neuralink is definitely a big player in the BCI field. But what about other companies? Are there others making waves in this space?
Oh, absolutely. There are a lot of companies working on different aspects of BCI technology.
Like who?
Well, there's Pairdromics, for example. They're focused on helping people who have lost the ability to speak.
So their BCI is designed for speech restoration.
Exactly. Imagine the impact this could have for individuals who have lost their voice due to stroke, paralysis, or other conditions.
It's amazing to think that we could give people their voice back.
It's a really promising area of research.
For sure. Are there any other companies doing similar work?
Yes, there's Synchron. They've developed a minimally invasive implant.
Minimally invasive? How does that work?
It's inserted through blood vessels rather than requiring open brain surgery.
That sounds a lot less risky.
It is. And it could potentially make BCI technology accessible to a wider range of patients.
It's incredible how quickly this technology is evolving.
It really is.
And I can't help but think about the ethical questions that come along with it.
Of course, that's a huge part of the conversation around BCIs.
Like who has access to our brain data, for instance?
Exactly. And could someone potentially use a BCI to influence our thoughts or actions? These are all things we need to consider.
It feels like we're on the verge of something huge, a technological revolution with massive implications. But it can be a little scary to think about the potential downsides.
I understand that. It's exciting and daunting at the same time.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
It is, and it's not just about the technology itself, but about how we as a society choose to develop and utilize it.
You're right. We need to make sure that this technology is used responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely. For human advancement, not just technological advancement.
Well said. So It sounds like we're at a crossroads with BCI technology.
Yeah.
The potential is vast, but so are the potential risks. And as we move forward, we need to be very careful.
I completely agree.
Now let's shift gears a bit and delve into some of the specific applications that are already making waves in the BCI space.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's start with the medical field, where this technology is offering hope and healing for people facing some incredible challenges.
Great idea.
I'm particularly interested in how BCIs are being used to restore movement for individuals with paralysis.
That's one of the most promising areas of research.
I've read about people using BCIs to control prosthetic limbs and even exoskeletons just with their thoughts.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Absolutely mind-blowing. So tell me, what kind of progress are we seeing in this area?
Well, researchers are developing increasingly sophisticated systems.
What do you mean by sophisticated?
Systems that allow for more natural and intuitive control of these devices.
So it's not just about regaining basic mobility, but about restoring a level of dexterity and control that was once thought impossible.
That's right.
Are there any specific cases that really illustrate this progress?
Sure. There's a case of a man who was paralyzed from the neck down due to a spinal cord injury.
I think I read about that one.
With the help of a BCI, he was able to control a robotic arm with enough precision to drink coffee from a cup.
Wow.
And he was even able to feed himself.
That's remarkable, to regain that level of independence after such a devastating injury.
It really is.
What other medical breakthroughs are we seeing with BCI technology?
Well, beyond restoring mobility, BCIs are showing potential in treating neurological disorders like Parkinson's disease and epilepsy.
So not just restoring lost function, but actually treating the underlying conditions themselves.
That's the goal.
How does that work?
In the case of Parkinson's, for example, BCIs can be used to deliver targeted electrical stimulation to specific areas of the brain.
Targeted electrical stimulation, okay.
This helps regulate abnormal brain activity and alleviate symptoms like tremors and rigidity.
So it's kind of like a pacemaker for the brain.
That's a good analogy.
That's incredible. So we're seeing BCIs used to restore movement, treat neurological disorders. What else? Are there other medical applications that look promising?
Yes, another area of research is focused on providing communication for individuals who are completely locked in.
Locked in. What does that mean?
It means they have no voluntary muscle control. They can't move or speak.
Oh, wow. That's
Imagine being able to communicate your thoughts and needs even when you can't move a muscle.
That would be life-changing for those individuals.
Yeah.
Are there any working examples of this?
There have been cases where researchers have used BCIs to enable individuals with locked-in syndrome to spell out words
Well, they can communicate.
and even have basic conversations using only their thoughts. It's still early-stage research, but it's very promising.
That's amazing. It's clear that BCI technology is already having a huge impact on the medical field, offering hope and healing for people facing some incredibly difficult challenges.
I agree. It's an exciting time to be working in this field.
But let's be honest, medical applications are just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, right. You're right. There's a whole universe of possibilities beyond the medical field.
We've got to talk about those mind-blowing possibilities,
Oh,
Holly.
absolutely.
Things that could fundamentally change how we live, work, and interact with the world.
Researchers are exploring some really amazing things.
Okay, give me the good stuff.
Okay.
What kind of human enhancement possibilities are we talking about here? Superhuman strength. Telepathy.
Maybe not telepathy, at least not yet.
Okay, fair enough.
But researchers are exploring some truly remarkable possibilities.
Like what?
For instance, imagine being able to interact directly with your brain's memory centers, enhancing your ability to learn and recall information.
So no more forgetting names or where I put my keys.
Okay.
Sign me up.
Well, we're not quite there yet.
Okay, but what else is on the table?
BCIs could also be used to create incredibly immersive, augmented reality experiences.
Oh.
How so?
Imagine bypassing the need for bulky headsets and controllers.
I hate those things.
Instead, you'd interface directly with your visual and auditory cortex.
Whoa, that would be incredible.
It would be like stepping into a whole new world.
Completely blurring the lines between reality and the digital realm.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got memory enhancement, augmented reality, anything else? What about boosting our cognitive abilities, like making us better at problem solving or decision making?
That's definitely on the radar.
Really?
Researchers are exploring the potential for cognitive enhancement using BCIs.
How would that work?
The idea is to optimize brain activity to improve things like learning, attention, and even creativity.
Wow. So we're not just talking about treating diseases or restoring lost function, but actually enhancing human capabilities beyond what we currently consider possible.
It's a powerful concept.
It is.
Yeah,
And a little bit scary, too.
I understand that. As with any powerful technology, there are ethical and societal considerations we need to address.
Right, we talked about those earlier. Data privacy, the potential for coercion, all of that.
It becomes even more important when we're talking about technologies that could change who we are and what we're capable of. Absolutely. It's a lot to think about.
It is.
So the potential of BCIs is enormous, but so are the potential risks. And we need to approach all of this very carefully.
I agree.
We need to navigate this new frontier with caution and a clear understanding of the ethical implications.
Well said. You know, it's amazing how many companies are working on BCIs these days.
It really is.
It's not just Neuralink.
Right, there's a whole ecosystem out there.
Exactly.
So who else should we be paying attention to?
Well, there's BlackRock Neurotech, for example.
BlackRock Neurotech.
Well, they've actually been developing implantable BCIs for decades.
Wow, really?
Yeah, mainly for medical research and applications.
I see, so they've been in the game for a while.
They have.
I've heard of something called the Utah Array.
Right.
Is that theirs?
It is.
What's that exactly?
It's basically a grid of tiny electrodes.
Okay.
They're implanted into the brain.
And what do?
They record neural activity.
So it's like a way to listen in on what the brain is doing.
Precisely.
That's pretty amazing.
It's been a really valuable tool for researchers.
In what way?
Well, for studying brain function.
Okay.
And also developing therapies for neurological disorders.
Right. That makes sense.
And then there's another company, Kernel.
Kernel. Okay.
They're taking a different approach.
So-
They're developing non-invasive BCIs.
Ah, so no implants.
That's right. They use neuroimaging techniques instead.
Neuroimaging. So like
Yeah.
brain scans?
Exactly.
What kind of brain scans are we talking about?
Things like fMRI and FNIRs.
fMRI and FNIRs.
fMRI stands for Functional Magnetic Resonance Imaging,
Right.
and FNIRS is Functional Near-Infrared Spectroscopy.
I'm going to be honest with you. Those are just fancy words to me.
I know, they sound complicated, but they're both basically ways to measure brain activity without having to do surgery.
So instead of implanting electrodes,
Right.
they use these external sensors to pick up on brain signals.
Precisely.
So I guess that's less invasive, which is good.
Definitely.
But I wonder if it's also less precise.
That's a good point.
Like, can you get the same level of detail with these external sensors compared to implanted electrodes?
That's a trade-off you have to consider.
Okay, so what's the trade-off?
Well, invasive BCIs, like the Utah Array, they can record signals from individual neurons.
Okay.
So you get very detailed information.
I see.
Non-invasive techniques like fMRI and FNRS, they give you broader measurements of brain activity.
So what does that mean?
They can tell you which brain regions are active,
Okay.
but not necessarily the precise firing patterns of individual neurons.
So it's like you're getting a zoomed-out view of the brain with fMRI and FNIRS,
That's a good way to put it.
and a more close-up view with invasive BCIs.
Right.
So different tools for different jobs, I guess.
Exactly.
Like you might use an invasive BCI if you want to control a prosthetic limb with a high degree of accuracy.
Right.
But you might use a non-invasive BCI if you want to monitor brain health or provide feedback during cognitive training.
That's a good example.
So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. And the choice of technology will also depend on the individual's needs and preferences.
Of course.
So it's great to see this diversity of approaches in the BCI field.
It's driving innovation.
But I think it's also important to be realistic about the risks involved.
Absolutely.
We've talked a lot about the potential benefits of BCIs,
Right.
but we can't forget about the potential downsides.
You're absolutely right.
Any technology that interfaces with the human brain carries inherent risks,
It does.
and BCIs are no exception.
No, they're not.
So what are some of the key risks that we need to be aware of?
Well, one concern is the potential for physical harm.
Okay, so like what kind of physical harm?
Well, implanting electrodes into the brain is a delicate procedure,
Right,
and there's always a risk of infection or bleeding
that makes sense.
or damage to surrounding brain tissue.
So even with Neuralink's surgical robot, things can still go wrong.
Of course, it's still brain surgery.
And even with non-invasive BCIs,
Right.
there's a potential for discomfort or headaches if they're not used properly.
There is.
Like if the sensors aren't calibrated correctly,
Yeah,
or if the user is exposed to too much stimulation.
that's possible.
So it's really important to make sure that BCIs are developed and used with safety in mind.
Absolutely. Safety and ethical considerations should always be at the forefront.
Absolutely. We need to be very careful with this technology.
You do.
You need rigorous testing,
Yes.
clear guidelines,
Definitely.
and we need to be open and honest about the potential risks.
I agree.
So we've talked about the potential for physical harm,
Right.
but what about the potential for psychological harm?
That's another important consideration.
We talked about the idea of mind control earlier,
Yeah,
but could BCIs also have unintended psychological effects?
that's a valid concern,
Like, imagine a BCI that's designed to enhance your mood.
right?
What if it malfunctions and sends your emotions into overdrive?
It's possible.
Or what if BCI that's designed to improve your memory accidentally erases some of your most precious memories?
Those are some serious risks that researchers are thinking about.
Scary to think about.
It is. The brain is incredibly complex,
Right.
and we're still learning about how it works.
So introducing technology into this delicate ecosystem could have unforeseen consequences.
It could.
So it's exciting to think about what BCIs might be able to do.
It is.
But we have to be cautious and responsible in how we develop this technology.
I agree.
Now let's talk about another key ingredient in BCI technology:
What's that?
artificial intelligence.
Ah, yes.
AI is playing an increasingly important role in BCIs.
It is.
It's used to decode brain signals, interpret user intentions, and control external devices.
Exactly.
So the BCI is like the bridge between the brain and the device.
Okay.
But AI is the
I'll
interpreter.
like that analogy.
It translates brain activity into commands that the device can understand.
That's a good way to think about it.
So how does that work in practice?
Well, AI algorithms are used to recognize patterns in brain activity, and then they associate those patterns with specific intentions.
Can you give me an example?
Sure, let's say you're thinking about moving your right hand.
Okay.
The AI algorithm will recognize the brain activity that corresponds to that intention,
Right.
and then it will send the command to a robotic arm to move accordingly.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
So AI is basically making BCIs more user-friendly.
It is. It's helping to make them more intuitive.
So as AI technology advances, we can expect BCIs to become even more sophisticated and capable.
Exactly.
I can imagine a future where BCIs are seamlessly integrated into our lives,
Right.
anticipating our needs and responding to our thoughts almost instantly.
That's the goal for many researchers.
It's kind of a crazy thought when you really think about it.
It is.
But this raises some pretty big questions about control and autonomy, doesn't it?
It does.
If a BCI is relying on AI to function,
Right.
who's really in control?
That's a complex question.
Is it the user, the AI, or some combination of the two?
It's hard to say for sure.
And as BCIs become more and more integrated with AI,
Yeah,
we need to think carefully about the ethical implications of that relationship.
we do.
It reminds me of those philosophical debates about consciousness and free will.
I see what you mean.
If our thoughts and actions are being mediated by a machine, what does that mean for our sense of self?
It's a profound question.
It's a little unsettling, isn't it?
It is. It challenges our understanding of what it means to be human.
Exactly.
And as we venture further into the realm of BCIs, we're going to have to grapple with these philosophical questions along with the technological advancements.
We are.
It's an exciting time,
It is.
but it's also a challenging time.
It's both.
We're witnessing the convergence of biology, technology, and philosophy in ways that were once unimaginable.
And this convergence is forcing us to confront some really fundamental questions about what it means to be human in an age of increasingly intelligent machines.
Exactly.
It's a journey with lots of potential,
It is.
but also lots of potential dangers.
That's right. And it's a journey we're all taking together.
Well said. Now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about one of the most mind-blowing possibilities of BCIs,
Okay, what's that?
telepathic communication.
Ah, the stuff of science fiction.
I know, right? The idea of communicating directly with another person's mind without words or gestures.
It's a fascinating concept.
It's the ultimate form of communication, isn't it?
It is, bypassing all the limitations of language and physical expression.
Exactly. But is it even possible? I mean, are there researchers actually working on this?
They are.
Really?
There have been some really interesting experiments using BCIs to allow people to transmit simple thoughts or images directly to another person's brain.
No way. So you're telling me this is actually happening?
It's happening.
It's not just a fantasy anymore.
Not anymore.
That's incredible.
It's still early stage research, of course.
Right.
But the results are very intriguing.
So imagine a world where we can share our thoughts and emotions instantly.
Without any need for words or interpretation.
It would revolutionize the way we communicate and connect with each other.
It would.
We could break down language barriers,
Exactly.
foster empathy,
It's possible.
create a more understanding world.
It's a beautiful thought.
It is. But wouldn't it also raise some serious concerns about privacy?
Of course it would.
If we can read each other's minds,
Right.
what happens to our
A
privacy?
big question.
What happens to our ability to keep our thoughts and feelings to ourselves?
It's a double-edged sword.
It
The
is.
potential for greater connection and understanding on the one hand,
Right.
and the potential for invasion and manipulation on the other.
That's a tough one.
We need to be very careful about how we develop and use this technology.
Absolutely. It's like opening Pandora's box.
I agree.
Once we have the ability to access each other's minds, there's no going back.
It's a powerful analogy.
It is. We need to proceed with caution.
We do.
Okay, I want to talk about another area where BCIs could have a huge impact.
Okay, which area?
Education.
Ah,
The traditional model of education.
right. With its emphasis on lectures and textbooks,
Yeah.
standardized tests.
It's outdated, isn't it?
It is. It's been criticized for being ineffective for a lot of learners.
It feels like a one-size-fits-all approach.
It does.
And it doesn't really cater to the individual needs of students.
Exactly.
But BCIs could change all of that, couldn't they?
They could.
They could personalize education like never before?
They could.
So how would that work?
Well, imagine a world where learning is instantaneous,
Okay.
where you can download knowledge directly into your brain.
It sounds like science fiction.
I know, but researchers are actually exploring ways to use BCIs to do this,
Really?
to enhance learning and memory.
Okay, but how?
Well, for example, by stimulating specific brain regions,
Right.
or by providing targeted feedback during the learning process.
So instead of passively absorbing information, BCIs could actively engage our brains and make learning more efficient.
And more enjoyable.
And wouldn't that be amazing?
It-
Imagine a classroom where every student is learning at their own pace,
Right?
focusing on the subjects they're most interested in,
Yes.
and receiving personalized feedback from a BCI-powered tutor.
It's an exciting vision.
It is. But doesn't this raise questions about the role of teachers?
It does.
I mean, if BCIs can do all of this, what happens to teachers?
That's a valid point.
What happens to the human element of education?
We need to make sure that BCIs don't replace teachers.
Right, we don't want to lose the mentorship, the guidance, the social and emotional aspects of learning.
Exactly.
BCIs should be seen as a tool to enhance education.
Not replace it.
It's like we were talking about with telepathic communication.
Right.
The technology itself is neutral.
It's all about how we use it.
It's up to us to decide how it shapes society.
That's right.
We need to make sure that BCIs are used to create a more equitable and empowering educational system.
Exactly. We don't want to create a system that leaves people behind.
So let's talk about another application of BCIs that I find really fascinating.
Okay, I'm curious.
Enhancing our connection with nature.
Yes.
Imagine being able to experience the natural world in a completely different way.
It's an interesting thought.
Like, what if you could see the world through the eyes of a bird,
Wow.
soaring above the trees, feeling the wind beneath your wings?
That would be incredible.
Or what if you could feel the vibrations of the earth through the roots of a tree?
Those are some powerful images.
BCIs could open up new realms of sensory experience,
They could.
allowing us to connect with nature on a deeper level.
And potentially foster a greater appreciation for the natural world,
Exactly.
which could then lead to better environmental stewardship.
Right, but I also wonder if this raises ethical questions about our relationship with nature.
It does.
Like, if we can control animals with our minds, should we?
That's a tough one.
If we could experience the world through the senses of other creatures,
Right.
does that give us the right to exploit them?
Those are questions we need to grapple with.
We need to be very careful as we develop BCIs that allow us to interact with nature in new ways.
We do.
We need to remember that we are part of nature, not separate from it.
Exactly. And our actions have consequences for the entire ecosystem.
Now, let's shift our focus to another area where BCIs are making waves. The world of sports.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Imagine athletes being able to train with incredible precision,
Right.
using BCIs to optimize their performance and push the boundaries of human potential.
It's an exciting possibility.
So how would that work?
Well, BCIs could provide real-time feedback on muscle activation, brainwave patterns, and other physiological data.
Okay.
This would allow athletes to fine-tune their movements and improve their technique.
So it'd be like having a personal coach inside your head.
Exactly.
Wow, guiding you towards peak performance.
And BCIs could also help athletes recover from injuries more quickly
Oh, interesting.
and prevent future injuries as well.
So BCIs could really revolutionize sports.
They could.
But it also raises some questions about fairness.
It does.
If some athletes are using BCIs to enhance their performance,
Right?
Does that create an uneven playing field?
What happens to the spirit of sportsmanship if technology becomes the deciding factor in athletic success?
These are all things we need to think about.
We do.
It seems like, with every exciting possibility that BCIs offer, there comes a whole set of ethical and philosophical questions that we need to grapple with.
That's the nature of transformative technology.
It challenges our assumptions and forces us to rethink our place in the world.
And our relationship with ourselves.
It's a lot to take in,
It is.
but I'm really glad we're having this conversation.
Me too.
And I'm excited to see where this technology takes us in the years to come.
Me too.
We're living in a time of unprecedented technological change.
We are, and BCIs are just one example of that change.
They're a powerful tool,
They are?
and we need to use them wisely.
I agree.
So let's continue this exploration with a sense of wonder and a healthy dose of caution.
Sounds like a plan.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into BCIs.
We have.
From medical breakthroughs to, well, some pretty mind-blowing possibilities.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has.
And it's clear that this technology has the power to change the world in some really big ways.
Huge ways.
Absolutely.
And I think we've only just scratched the surface.
I agree.
As BCI technology keeps advancing,
Yeah.
we can expect even more groundbreaking applications.
Oh, for sure.
And probably even more ethical challenges.
Definitely. It's both exciting and a little daunting to think about.
It is.
The possibilities are immense, but so are the risks.
Right, but one thing's for sure. This is not a topic we can just ignore.
It's not. These technologies are raising some really fundamental questions.
About what it means to be human, about the nature of consciousness, about the future of our species.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
let's try to distill some key takeaways for you.
Sounds good.
What are the most important things to keep in mind as we move forward into this uncharted territory?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is that BCIs are tools.
Okay, tools.
They can be used for good or for bad.
Right, depending on the intentions of the people using them.
It's like any powerful technology, fire, nuclear energy, the internet.
It can be used to build or to destroy.
Exactly. So we need to be mindful of that.
Mindful of the potential for misuse.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that BCIs are developed ethically.
With safeguards in place to protect people.
To prevent harm.
Absolutely.
We've talked a lot about ethical considerations.
Right.
But I also think it's important to think about the societal implications.
Okay, so how will BCIs impact our lives, our relationships, our communities?
Big questions.
They are, and I don't think we have all the answers yet.
No, but we're starting to ask the right questions.
And that's important.
It is.
I think it's safe to say that BCIs have the potential to change the way we live in some pretty fundamental ways.
I agree. I mean, just imagine a world where we can communicate telepathically,
Right.
where we can learn new skills instantly,
Yes.
where virtual reality is indistinguishable from the real world.
It's a future full of incredible possibilities.
It is, but I think we need to be prepared for the challenges as well.
Of course, we need to think about the impact on employment, education, healthcare,
Every aspect of our lives,
and we need to make sure that BCIs are accessible to everyone.
not just a select few.
We don't want to create a society where some people have enhanced minds and others are left behind.
That's a really important point.
It is.
We need to use this technology to lift everyone up.
to create a more equitable and just world.
Exactly.
And it's not just about the technology itself.
Right.
It's about the values that guide its development and use.
We need to approach BCIs with humility
Recognizing the complexity of the human brain.
and the potential consequences of altering it.
We need to put safety and ethics first.
And I think we need to keep having these conversations.
Absolutely. Open and honest conversations about the future we want to create.
So I think this deep dive has given you a good overview of BCIs.
It's a complex topic.
It is. We've talked about some amazing potential benefits,
We have
but we've also talked about some really serious ethical challenges.
challenges we can't ignore.
No. And it's up to all of us to keep learning,
To keep asking questions.
to engage with the ethical and societal implications of this technology.
The future is in our hands.
Let's make it a good one.
I'm with you on that.
Well, that's it for this deep dive into brain-computer interfaces.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.